The stories of the Bible are some of the most incredible tales in human history.
Tales of right and wrong, good versus evil. But how did these stories originate? I'm curious to know where these cultural ripples began. Because regardless of your belief, they're important. Because they've shaped the lives of billions over thousands of years.
My name is Albert Lin, and I look at the world in a unique way. I use 21st century technology to look back into the past. I explore the ancient world from space. With the help of science, I'm going to strip away the Earth to find answers that have been hidden for centuries. I'll be traveling to some of the most incredible and awe-inspiring places on Earth to reveal lost cities and ancient cataclysms. And I'm going to start by unraveling the mysteries of an iconic biblical tale with a miracle at its heart.
Let's start with the premise of the story. It describes a man named Moses who demands Pharaoh free his people, the Israelites, after years of slavery.
According to the story, God unleashes a series of plagues until finally Pharaoh agrees to release the Israelites.
So they leave Egypt and they head for the Promised Land.
If we believe what is written in the Bible, then a satellite looking down on ancient Egypt some 3,000 years ago would have seen something amazing. A vast cavalcade of people, the Israelites, heading for freedom. But Pharaoh changes his mind and sends his army to chase them down and to kill them. The Israelites increase their pace, but their way is blocked by an impenetrable obstacle, the Red Sea. They're trapped. And the Egyptian army is closing in fast. Then, supposedly, something extraordinary happens. Moses stretches out his arm. The waters part, and the Israelites escape across the exposed seabed. As the Egyptian army pursues them, the waters flood back in. And Pharaoh's army is destroyed. It's a great story, but could anything like this have ever really happened? In search of answers, I've come to the site of all the action, the beating heart of the ancient world.
Just a few weeks ago, I was driving my kids to school. And now I'm here, in Egypt, on top of this monument. There's just few places in the world that make you feel like, overwhelmed.
Most experts agree that the story of Moses and the Israelites happened in the time of Ramses II, the greatest of all pharaohs. He reached the height of his powers around 1250 BC. So that gives us a precise date. It's a start, but there's a problem. The biblical texts tell us that there were Israelites in Egypt for generations, but no one has found any physical trace of them. But I've been told there's one tantalizing clue. To track it down, I'm off to one of the great museums of the world.
Wow.
The answer I'm looking for, well, it might just be hidden within these walls.
It's like a warehouse of antiquities. This place is incredible.
I'm here to meet Meredith Brand, an archaeologist working in Cairo.
Is there anything here that describes the Israelites from the Egyptian record?
There is something I'd like to show you. Way over here in the corner, there's this stela. There's something on the back that's really interesting.
A vital clue, but hidden deep in the shadows.
If we look here, so this is the victory stela of Mereneptah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. That's Mereneptah, the guy in the middle. He's the son of Ramses II.
The Ramses the Great.
The Ramses the Great,
Wow,
yeah, his
okay.
son. And he was ruling in the early 1200s BC. But what's really impressive is down here.
This piece has actually been it looks discolored.
This is where people have been touching it so much. So what you have, the two reed leaves right there, that's a Y. That long thing with two lines, that's a rope, that's an S. That's a mouth, it's an R. A single reed is an I. Then you have the vulture, it's an A. And then you have another R. The ancient Egyptians didn't actually have an L in their language, so when they were writing foreign words that had L's, they used an R. And that would say Israel.
This actually says Israel.
It actually says Israel. This is the first and the only mentioning of the word Israel in an ancient Egyptian text.
That's remarkable.
From the son of Ramses II, a story written in stone describing his victory over a people called Israel. But that's all there is. The Israelites are at the center of our story. But why is there only one mention of Israel in the entire Egyptian record? Maybe the problem is the name. What if the Israelites were called something else? I'm following a lead, heading south on a near 500-mile journey from Cairo to the city of Luxor.
My whole life, I never dreamed I'd be watching the sunset over the Nile. It's surreal.
In the time of Ramses II, Luxor was called Thebes. It was his capital city, the religious and ceremonial center of the whole Egyptian empire.
I'm excited. And not just because we're surrounded by all this epic ancient history and culture, but because
I've been told there's evidence here of a mysterious people who might just be the real Israelites. Luxor is full of magnificent temples and hidden secrets. And it might hold the key to my quest.
I've been told about these mysterious people, the Shasu, and the evidence surrounding them is really compelling. Firstly, there's these hieroglyphs which read, the Shasu of Yahweh. Yahweh is the God of the Israelites. So maybe these are the people I'm looking for. And secondly, there's a papyrus that says the Shasu fled Egypt right around the same time as the story of Moses was taking place.
Finally, the reason I'm here. Among all these splendid temples, I'm looking for something much smaller. In the 1930s, archaeologists found something amazing here. The ruins of a very distinctive house that many believe was built by the Shasu. I want to find it. Because the remains of very similar houses have been found all over the Holy Lands. If the Shasu built houses in both places, that suggests their travels took them between Egypt and the Holy Lands, just like the story of the Israelites. This is a photo of one of the houses found in Israel. The layout makes it very distinctive, almost like a fingerprint. So this is what I'm looking for. Somewhere in this wasteland is where the Shasu might have lived. Or rather, under it. Because on the surface, all traces have gone. But it's not all lost. I can use my tech to see what my eyes can't. Stone walls underground have a different heat signature to the sand. So by looking in the infrared spectrum, I can reveal secrets hidden for millennia.
Look at that.
This structure looks interesting. It's a pretty good match. With the same signature fingerprint as the house in Israel. Wow. We may have discovered another Shasu house. This is the first time in 3,000 years that anyone has seen it. It's possible. These are the Israelites that I've been searching for. And there are traces of them everywhere. This might be the closest I can ever get to them.
I just picked this up out of the mud brick over there. It's incredible. What really gets me about pottery is that this amphor, which was made thousands of years ago, locked in time in this clay, as you run your fingers across the inside, you're feeling the fingerprints of the person who made this. Powerful.
So I may have found the slaves that Moses led out of Egypt. Now the question is, can I find the lost city where they began their journey?
According to the Bible, the story of Exodus began at a city called Ramses. But you can't map that on your phone.
Archaeologists think ancient Ramses was located 360 miles north of Luxor, on a site now occupied by the town of Quantir. Somewhere around here is a lost city. Hard to believe looking at it now. All I can see is modern urban sprawl.
So I'm looking for the city of Ramses.
You're actually standing right in it. It's underneath our feet.
You're kidding me.
Luckily, my guide, archaeologist Henning Fransmeyer, has been exploring this site for 14 years. And he knows that hidden amongst the farmers' fields lies one incredible glimpse into a magnificent past.
Wow. What is this?
The feet of a massive statue.
This is surreal. Find this in the middle of a field like this. Are these glyphs?
This is actually the hieroglyphs that are telling us who is depicted in the statue. It's the name of Ramses II.
So this is a statue of his feet.
That is his feet, yes.
I mean, people are just farming away around this ancient statue of Ramses, huh? We know there was a city called Ramses here from 3,000 years ago. But what I want to know is that what's under my feet matches the descriptions in the Bible. And if it does, then maybe this is the starting point for the events that inspired the story of Exodus.
I'm going to use technology to peel back time and reveal the secrets of this ancient city. Henning has used a technique here called magnetometry, which records tiny changes in the Earth's magnetic field to reveal hidden structures underground.
I've got a hold of some magnetometry data. I've got a pretty cool idea of what we can do with it.
The statue in the field is right here. The magnetometry data shows it belonged to a temple. But what else does the data reveal? And does it match what's described in the Bible? First, the text describes Ramses as a large and important city. Henning's scans reveal that P. Ramses covered 11 square miles. He estimates tens of thousands lived here. That's a huge city for ancient times. This area was tightly packed with houses where ordinary people lived. Right next door, this huge villa would have been home to someone rich and powerful. Next, the text described Ramses as a store city, so there should have been storerooms. Storerooms are usually rectangular buildings, divided into narrow chambers. Looks like that's what we could have here. Finally, we know that Pharaoh kept his chariots here. That means stables. Over here, Henning's excavations have uncovered a huge stable for 460 horses. Just what you would need for an army of chariots. So the answers are there, laid out in the data. But what I want to know now is what this place looked like. That's where my tech comes in.
All right, it's gonna get pretty cool now. We built an augmented reality platform that combines Henning's magnetometry scans with a digital reconstruction of what we think this place might have looked like 3,000 years ago. And with this little piece of tech, we can get a window, literally a window into the past. Okay, ready?
Archaeologists have helped us recreate the city as it might have once looked.
Wow. There it is. Ramses II. Let's see what's here. Looks like it could have been a storeroom. Looks like a stable. Wow. All right.
Around the corner, a street of houses. And not too far to the north,
Look at that palace. P. Ramses must have been an incredible place. And maybe the Shasu started their journey from there. And if they did, where'd they go? Was it the Red Sea? The really big question is, how do you explain what happened next?
one question has puzzled scholars for centuries. If the Israelite story is based on actual events, what route did they take to the Holy Lands? The direct route would have taken them east along the Mediterranean coast. But the biblical story maps the Israelites' journey via the desert road towards the Red Sea. And that means a long hike in this searing heat.
I came here just to understand this desert, what it might have been like to try to cross it. Maybe 3,000 years ago or today, it's all the same. There's nothing here, no water, it's not even a tree. It would kill me probably in a matter of days.
According to the story, somehow the Israelites made it across, straight into an even tougher challenge, the Red Sea. How on earth were they going to get across that before the Egyptians caught up with them? To find out, I'm on my way to a place where the biblical texts say they set up camp. Etham, now believed to be modern-day Ismailia.
All right.
Nice.
Yeah, out of the sun, huh?
I'm here to meet biblical archaeologist, Professor Stephen Moshier.
So this is Ismailia, where we are.
Yeah, yep. Well, it turns out we're really close to the description of where the Israelites went.
It's at this point in the story that the Bible tells the tale of Moses parting the Red Sea. So from Etham, the Israelites would have headed south. It makes sense that they would have crossed the narrowest point of the northern part of the Red Sea, here. To figure out the problem Moses faced, I need to know how wide and how deep it was at this point. Bathymetry data can reveal the depth of seas and oceans.
This is 300 feet, about 90 meters in depth. And across, it's 30 miles.
Right.
That's a lot of water. Now, to me, that doesn't make any sense.
My calculations show that to create a mile-wide channel, big enough to allow a vast group of Israelites to pass, Moses would have needed to move nearly 2 trillion gallons of water. You need the Hoover Dam to hold back that much water. And even if it happened, how could so many people make it over in just one night?
let's say there was some event that allowed the water to be removed for a moment. Okay, but even then, how do you make 30 miles on foot in a single day? I mean, for me, I can't run 30 miles in a day.
I agree with you.
That's a lot of distance to cover.
Right now, the parting of the Red Sea looks impossible. At least it looks impossible here. But what if it happened somewhere else? Stephen has come up with an extraordinary theory that turns the story on its head.
The thing is that I don't think this is the Red Sea that the Bible's talking about. I think it's important to know that it was mistranslated. We call it the Red Sea because that's what we read in our English Bible, Red Sea. But the actual language in Hebrew was Yam Suf, and a better translation is Sea of Reeds, or the Reed Sea.
Reed Sea. That's incredible. I mean, every story that I've heard about this talks about the Red Sea, the parting of the Red Sea. And I just learned that it could be a misinterpretation of the Reed Sea. I mean, that just blows my mind. I gotta find out more.
I have no idea where to find the mysterious Reed Sea, but I've been told there's a clue hidden back in Luxor. In a country filled with wonders, the Karnak Temple complex is one of the greatest. And engraved on one of its magnificent walls is something extraordinary. An epic pictorial history of the conquests of Pharaoh Seti I, father of Ramses II. And archaeologist Aidan Dodson believes it could hold the key to my quest.
What is this?
Well, basically what you've got is a whole sequence here with Seti dealing with rebels, and he's bringing them along to the border of Egypt.
Who are those rebels?
A bunch of people know there's the Shasu.
The Shasu.
Yes, the Shasu.
Bound as captives and carved in stone, the very people I've been looking for. And crucially, it turns out that this inscription is more than just a story.
What you've got here is this almost aerial view of the coast of Egypt. And then we've got this watercourse coming through.
So this is actually a map?
Effectively, yeah, it's a very schematic one.
And Aidan believes it's a map that could show us the way to the Reed Sea.
Well, this is a river. Is there an image of a Reed Sea?
Well, basically, you've got this waterway here. The little things on either side are actually reeds. It fits quite nicely being of the Nile Delta, which is a fairly marshy kind of area.
It may look like a river, but Aidan thinks this channel represents the whole Nile Delta, with all its lakes, tributaries, and even crocodiles. There's one more clue in the biblical text. It says the night before they crossed the Reed Sea, the Israelites camped near a place called Migdol.
Migdol is a generic term for a fortress. It doesn't actually mean a specific place. However, in the context of what you're trying to look into, we've actually got one of these Migdols just here.
I am incredibly excited about this fact that we're starting to get closer to the unfolding of a potential story. And it's in a map.
But where is Migdol? And how does it relate to the Reed Sea? The ancient Egyptians drew their maps upside down, with the south at the top. To make sense of it, I need to look at it in a different way. And it all becomes clear. Migdol is east of the Nile Delta. The Israelites' journey now takes a very different route. If we follow this map, the strange detour south to the Red Sea is gone. Instead, from Etham, they turn north towards Migdol, then east on a direct route to the Holy Lands. I'm going to follow this route towards Migdol and try to find the Reed Sea. Straight away, something on the map catches my eye. A large body of water called Lake Manzala in the heart of the Nile Delta. And it's full of reeds.
This is it. Lake Manzala. And it's massive. I mean, it's huge. If you were being chased by an army, there's no way around it. You'd think it was a sea. And there's reeds everywhere. It'd be a reed sea. It's possible. It really is.
What I discovered next took my breath away.
I'm reading this account from 1882 from a British Army officer, Major General Sir Alexander Bruce Tulloch.
Tulloch and his men were camped near Lake Manzala when he witnessed something truly extraordinary. This is what he wrote. A gale of wind from the eastward set in. And became so strong that I had to cease work. The next morning, on going out, I found that Lake Manzala had totally disappeared. The effect of the high wind on the shallow water having actually driven it away, beyond the horizon. And the natives were walking about in the mud where the day before the fishing boats, now aground, had been floating. It suddenly flashed across my mind that I was witnessing a similar event to what had taken place at the time of the passage of the so-called Red Sea by the Israelites.
1882. Wow.
Maybe the same thing happened here, all those thousands of years ago. I've come to an ocean lagoon called Lake Manzala. I want to find out from atmospheric scientist Carl Drews if science can explain what Tulloch saw here in 1882.
So this is Lake Manzala.
Yes, this is a huge coastal lagoon. This is about maybe waist deep right offshore. If you get farther out, it's maybe chest deep, and farther out, maybe even over your head. So it's a real shallow lake.
Carl is convinced that what Tulloch saw is scientifically possible, and that he was right to think that it was caused by strong winds.
If you had wind blowing at 50 miles an hour for 6 hours, you get all the water shifting about 6 miles. That's called wind set down.
Okay, so that would basically create this effect of removing the ocean.
Yeah, it'll just peel away from the shore. So the ocean is gone, the sea is gone, and there's dry land there. And when the wind stops, the water comes rushing back again. That is the best explanation for the phenomenon that's reported in Exodus 14.
This is footage of a beach in the Bahamas. It was taken just weeks before Hurricane Irma hit in 2017. Now, look at the same coastline in the immediate aftermath. The water's gone, and the land, it's exposed. The parting of this sea isn't a miracle, it's science. But there still is a problem. Lake Manzala is over here, but Migdol, where the story says the Israelites camped before they crossed, it's here, 30 miles away and nowhere near a lake. Lake Gonzalez in the wrong place. But this is a mystery I think I can solve from space. Satellites can track how rivers move and change course over time. Since the time of Moses, the lakes and channels of the Nile Delta will have moved many miles. This is what the area around Migdol looks like now. If we switch to the infrared part of the spectrum, we can reveal areas that were once underwater. So let's jump back in time and see what it might have looked like in 1250 BC. And there it is.
That's very nice. It's really neat to see all this stuff.
A reed sea, exactly where it's described in the story. And there's more. Carl thinks the shape of this ancient lake matches the story perfectly.
So they're marching along this ridge here, and they get stuck right there. And then when the water shifted this way and parted around that point, they ran across to there.
Potentially. This is what you think could have happened.
That's my suggestion, yes.
So finally, maybe this explains the mystery of the parting of the Red Sea.
But for me, the theory misses one major point of the story, which is that water supposedly rushed back in, drowning the army and killing everybody there. These waters, they're really shallow, probably no more than 6 feet deep. That doesn't add up. It just doesn't quite do it.
Perhaps like many ancient tales, the Exodus story was formed from memories of more than one event. It could have even been from different times. So I'm on the hunt for a more violent ending. And there's a clue back down south in one of the most important sites in the ancient world.
This is the Valley of the Kings, where Egypt's great pharaohs were buried. You know, Tutankhamun, even Ramses II.
But I'm not here for them. This is the tomb of Thutmose III. It was one of the first tombs to be built in the valley.
Wow, it's just amazing. There's stars all over the ceiling.
This is what I came to see.
I heard about these drowning Egyptians.
Just like Pharaoh's army. But what makes this painting really significant is the date. It was created around 1550 BC. 300 years before the story of Exodus, but right at the time of an ancient disaster so jaw-dropping that people would talk about it for thousands of years. It turns out the final part of my quest lies not in Egypt, but 500 miles northwest, in the middle of the Mediterranean. In the ancient world, the island of Santorini was a vast volcano called Thera. and around 1550 BC, the same time as the painting of the drowned Egyptians. It erupted with a force of 2 million atomic bombs, hurling billions of tons of rock and ash 20 miles into the air. It was one of the biggest volcanic eruptions in human history. But could it have inspired the story of Pharaoh's drowned army? Dr. Evie Namiku is a scientist who has studied the eruption and the effect it had on the region.
We had a lot of pyroclastic flows that entered into the sea very, very violently with high speed.
What do you mean pyroclastic?
You have a lot of materials like pumice, volcanic rocks.
This is pumice.
Yeah, this is pumice. All of this material fallen into the sea very violently.
Creating these waves of energy. Boom, boom.
Yeah, generated multiple mega tsunamis, not only one.
That's like unbelievable.
But were any of these tsunamis so big that they could have traveled 500 miles to Egypt? I can combine Evie's data with the satellite image to see just how much material hit the water. These underwater mountains are all pyroclastic material from the eruption. Evie calculates that the total volume of 19 cubic miles of pyroclastic material entered the water. That's nearly 3 trillion cubic feet, hitting the sea at hundreds of miles an hour. Scientists believe this eruption would have caused a series of tsunamis. The biggest could have been 100 feet high. This monster wave could still have been 20 feet when it hit the coast of Egypt. We know from recent events just how destructive tsunamis can be. The coast of Egypt is flat and low-lying. The wave could have traveled miles inland. The effects, they would have been devastating. It's incredible that a volcanic island in the Mediterranean could be the last piece of an ancient Egyptian puzzle.
In that time, anyone witnessing a tsunami would think it was an act of God. And if you were fleeing persecutions and the seas parted for any reason, you would think a higher force was helping you. You add in a mighty leader with a staff. And no matter what you believe, you get a story so resonant that it's lasted for thousands of years. It's inspired multiple religions, and it's shaped the lives of billions.
The stories of the Bible are some of the most incredible tales in human history.
Tales of right and wrong, good versus evil. But how did these stories originate? I'm curious to know where these cultural ripples began. Because regardless of your belief, they're important. Because they've shaped the lives of billions over thousands of years.
My name is Albert Lin, and I look at the world in a unique way.
That's amazing.
I explore the ancient world from space. Using 21st century technology to strip away the Earth as never before. To expose secrets buried for centuries. and reveal lost cities and ancient cataclysms. This time, it's the Old Testament's most fearsome disaster movie. The story of two cities obliterated in a hail of fire by the wrath of God. I've come to Jordan, in the Middle East, one of the most epic landscapes on Earth.
This is the Holy Lands. Beneath my feet, just rocky desert. This is incredible. Then out to the west, you've got Israel, and then Egypt. South is Saudi Arabia. East is Iran, Iraq. Then to the north, it's Syria. Where I am, it's smack dab in the middle.
I'm here to investigate one of the most terrifying stories in the Bible, Sodom and Gomorrah. Two cities supposedly wiped off the face of the earth by the wrath of God.
So the story begins with a man named Abraham. He goes with his nephew, a guy named Lot, looking for what they believe their God had promised them as a home.
Problem was, they split up. And Lot makes a bad call when he decides to settle on the fertile plains near a city called Sodom, at war with its neighbors, and condemned from above.
And that is when things get hot. Lot is warned that God is going to destroy the town and they have to flee without looking back. And he does, just in the nick of time, with his family. As fire and brimstone begin raining down, destroying everything alive, even the vegetation. Lot's wife just can't help but look back one last time. And because of it, she's instantaneously turned into a pillar of salt.
As for the cities, they were utterly destroyed.
This is like the mother of all disaster movies. And it plays into our most basic fears. An apocalypse that could wipe us all out. Hurricanes, floods, earthquakes. I mean, these are fears that still exist today. But was it just a story? A tale of morality? Or could it actually have been based on events that really took place?
So my first mission, can I find any trace of an ancient city somewhere this could have happened? But look where I am. And now again, from space. The whole region is a scorching desert. There's very little here, except sand and rock.
With so few traces, it's hard to understand how cities even existed here. How could they exist in such a vast, arid desert?
So where should I start to look? Well, there is a hint. The ancient word for Sodom.
The biggest clue comes from the word Siddim, which in Hebrew means a salt lake. So naturally, most scholars believe it's somewhere in the plains near the Dead Sea.
It's a rugged drive across the desert. But eventually, I come to this vast inland lake, the Dead Sea. One of the most spectacular bodies of water in the world. But it doesn't look like the fertile oasis described in the story.
It's not sand lining this beach, it's salt. This is the Dead Sea. You know, it's almost 10 times saltier than the ocean. I mean, I'm actually standing on the lowest point on Earth. It's one of the hottest, too.
Seems impossible to survive here. Why would anybody settle in the driest and saltiest place on Earth? Well, according to archaeologists, there may be a clue 80 miles south.
Look at that. I've never seen anything in my life like this.
This is Petra, an ancient city carved into solid rock in the middle of the desert.
Somebody, thousands of years ago, just dreamed this up in their head and then chipped away at the stone until it emerged. Look at these towering columns here and the perfect lines. I've seen pictures of since I was a kid. I've seen it in books, in movies, standing at the steps of the great treasury of Petra.
It's magical by night. But by day, it's something else. The scale of the place takes your breath away. Petra's buildings are a show of wealth, and while they're built around the time of Christ, they're the pinnacle of a success that started thousands of years earlier, at around the same time that Sodom and Gomorrah may have existed. But the most amazing thing about this place is not its splendor, it's this.
Just look at this channel. This is a huge vertical irrigation system taking water that's landing on the plateau above from rain, falling down through these grooves, and then channeling down towards the city below, essentially creating an engineered oasis. Unbelievable.
The people here were experts of capturing water from the plateaus above, diverting it into a network of channels that fed into underground cisterns.
Look at this. I mean, this is the kind of thing that would allow an entire city to survive. This is basically the bank for life. They figured out how to do the plaster walls to keep the water in. Even today, there's water in here. It's incredible. It's a technology that's worked so simply and so well for so long. And it's got great acoustics. It's like a big music box in here. You know, actually, this is what they would have heard working down here thousands of years ago. You could imagine it's like, "Hey, Joe, hand me this scraper."
Saving every precious drop spelled survival. But the question remains, why go to all this trouble? Why did people want to live here in the first place? I'm in Petra, meeting archaeologist Katrina Harmane, who's showing me why this vast city thrived in a harsh desert. Turns out, they had a stranglehold on priceless goods from across the region.
The most extraordinary one is asphalt.
Asphalt? The stuff that we see, on the roads today, the same black tar stuff is...
Yes, indeed. This is how we visualize asphalt now. This dark, material that you see in here. But at that time, it was absolutely something different.
Asphalt, or tar, is a semi-solid form of petroleum, which in ancient times meant one thing: money.
What would they use asphalt for?
First, medicine, and the second, they used to sell it, for the Egyptians who used it in their mummification.
Selling asphalt meant the people of Petra could rake in big bucks fast. But there was one source of asphalt that everyone wanted to control.
They had an asphalt lake. There was a large lumps of asphalt just floating on top of what we know is the Dead Sea. So we had different nations fighting for it, for its importance. The biblical story is quite interesting because it actually mentions several kings fought for the asphalt, which could have been the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Do you think that Sodom and Gomorrah could have existed at the Dead Sea, trading the same asphalt?
Indeed, I think that is quite possible.
All very promising. But can I find any physical evidence for this back at the Dead Sea? Where the biblical texts locate Sodom and Gomorrah? I'm setting up my tech to scour the area. Can I find a link here between the asphalt and the cities?
Okay, check this out. In these scans, taken from space, you see something really weird. Just in this area, right around the south of the Dead Sea. And the whole area is just pockmarked with these mysterious holes.
Heading down there, I find a strange landscape. It looks like another planet, where the Earth is cracked and collapsed to form hundreds of giant holes in the ground.
Look at these sinkholes. Just destruction. The biblical stories, the Genesis stories, they describe battles between the city of Sodom and the other cities. The men of Sodom, when running away, fell into tar pits. Not these ones, but maybe ones just like this.
So the biblical story of tar pits could have been kicked off by sinkholes filled with asphalt. A clear connection to the trade I heard about in Petra. But that's not all my satellites have seen. Above the tar pits, there's a local water supply.
Check this out. On this side of the Dead Sea, you've got this plateau, and there's these canyons that look like they're cut right through it.
And where there's canyons, there's water.
These seasonal rains carve through the plateau, creating these canyons. They're called wadis. You get these channels of fresh water.
So, just like Petra, the area seems to have had all the ingredients needed for cities to flourish. Now, can I scan for any traces of the ruined cities themselves? To the naked eye, it's just a desert.
But when you look from space with really high-resolution satellite imagery, it turns out these shores are speckled with ancient ruins. I mean, check out this one. And this one right here.
In fact, there's at least 5, southeast of the Dead Sea.
I mean, couldn't 2 of them be the sites that inspired the story of Sodom and Gomorrah?
I'm on the shores of the Dead Sea, on a mission to find the biblical cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. My tech has revealed a whole cluster of ancient ruins. Can I narrow it down? I'm basically looking for a Bronze Age settlement, roughly 4,000 years old.
Typically, they were built on a hill, fortified by walls, with the main gate entering into some kind of public square. And these were features that were described in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Some of them here seem to match the description, and one in particular, a settlement called New Mira. It's a steep hike onto a strategic position above the Dead Sea. And I'm meeting archaeologist Dr. Mohammed Najjar.
So this is Numera.
Pile of rocks.
It's ancient. I mean, it's 5,000 years of history.
Mohammed tells me the site was abandoned suddenly around 2350 BC. And it has the same key city features that make it a classic Bronze Age city. Gates.
Gates are important to show that your site is fortified and just keep away from us.
And beyond them, a square and fortification walls, fitting for a city supposedly at war with its neighbors. At the far end of the ruins, something intriguing.
So this is what we think is a tower.
So this was once a massive tower.
Yes. What is interesting about this tower, that it collapsed. In this spot here, there were 3 skeletons under the collapse. We think that was caused by an earthquake.
That's so creepy. I mean, this is where 3 people lost their lives thousands and thousands of years ago.
Yes, they were standing here at the wrong time.
Compelling evidence. But that's not all.
You will notice ash here and the charcoal.
Ah, this is incredible.
The whole site is covered with ash.
Something burnt this whole place down.
Yes.
And this earthquake may have been the same thing that started the fire?
Absolutely. Usually with earthquakes, you have fires, massive fires.
That's so interesting. Fire. It certainly adds to the clues of the story.
It's a tantalizing idea. An earthquake that sparks an all-consuming fire. But what could cause them to combine together so catastrophically? So I'm heading west, to a place that might help me find the answer. Up above the western shores of the Dead Sea is an ancient fortress called Masada.
It's really inaccessible up here. I mean, it really makes sense that this was a key strategic site in Jewish history.
But, I don't know, like 74 AD,
there was a battle where the Romans were coming here, and this community of about 1,000 people ended up on the top of this mountain. holding out for almost 2 years. The Romans built a ramp up the backside of this entire mountain. And by the time they brought all their battering rams all the way up to the top of this cliff, instead of subjecting themselves to being captured and enslaved by the Romans, they all killed themselves.
But I have not come here for the fortress, but for this.
Wow.
Beneath me, the whole landscape that would have surrounded Sodom and Gomorrah. And it's only from up here that I can see that I am on the brink of one of the biggest geological features on the planet.
I feel like I'm standing on this island in the sky with cliffs just towering up. From up here, you can see it all. You can see it's a giant, giant rift valley where the Earth's crust is just pulling itself apart.
And you can see it even better from space. A 300-mile-long tear in the Earth's crust called the Jordan Rift Valley. Turns out, there are huge fault lines running all the way along the Dead Sea. And where there are fault lines, there are earthquakes.
So that means that any city out here around the Dead Sea, it's essentially lying on an earthquake zone. I mean, it's like they're on a ticking time bomb. So the next piece of the puzzle is essentially, were there ever any earthquakes at the time in which Numeria was abandoned?
Challenging question, but there may be a way to find out. For thousands of years, water in the Dead Sea has risen and then fallen, meaning in places, ancient sediments laid down by flash floods onto the lake floor are now high and dry. And in these layers, there are clues about ancient earthquakes. Geologist Revital Bookman can read these layers like the rings of a tree.
This is weird. What is this swirly pattern shape up here? How does that happen?
There is a slope here. And during an earthquake event, the sediments shake. You get the sliding of the sediments toward the deeper part of the lake.
That's an earthquake?
Yeah.
This is essentially an ancient seismometer dating back tens of thousands of years.
Exactly. If we date the sediment just on top of it, we will get the age of this event.
So the cities that we've been looking at date sometime to around 2600 to about 2350 BC. Do you find anything like this around that time?
When you look at the younger sediments, you can find evidence for historical earthquakes.
From that time?
Yeah, from that time.
That is crazy. I mean, I feel like when I'm looking at this thing, I'm literally touching the vibrations of an earthquake. You could feel it.
And it's shaking.
That's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Thank you.
Impressive evidence, but it's only part of the story.
You know, an earthquake may have been involved, but the biblical text describes something far more terrifying.
A blaze of fire falling from the sky. I'm on my way to see a strange geological spectacle that could help track down the events behind the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. On the east coast of the Dead Sea is this incredible pillar of rock, a source of imagination and intrigue for centuries. It's known as Lot's wife.
The story goes that angels warned Lot and his family, run away, flee, don't look back. Lot's wife couldn't help but look back one last time
and in that moment, it was turned into a pillar of salt. Now, obviously, that's just a metaphor. That doesn't happen. But there might be something in that metaphor that could tell us more about the catastrophe itself.
Could the pillar of salt in the story help unlock the secret of fire and brimstone? 10 miles away, on the opposite shore of the lake, is Mount Sodom. It takes its name from the same Hebrew word for the Dead Sea, Siddim, which means salt lake. I'm meeting geologist Amatz Agnon.
Professor Agnon.
That's Albert, right?
Yeah, thanks for meeting me.
Thank you. Shall we?
Yes. Like we're on a different planet almost.
Yeah.
Amatz wants to show me an intriguing link between salt and fire.
This place is incredible.
But what we're looking for, it's not on the mountain, it's inside it.
Okay. Going in. I'm about to step into the ledge. Once I go over this, I'm just on air. Wow. It's so beautiful. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. I'm dangling hundreds of feet off the ground. It's nuts. It looks so different up here.
Yeah.
The rock is completely different. It's just all of this glassy kind of crystal stuff.
See if you can taste it.
It's salty.
Yeah. It's a mass of salt.
This whole thing is salt?
Yeah, the whole mountain, 10 kilometers long, 2 kilometers wide, 5 kilometers high.
It's incredible.
Good job.
That was unbelievable.
Amatz believes mountains of salt like this one could unlock the mystery of catastrophic fires.
Salt and hydrocarbons go well together. It's typically hidden or trapped under salt.
There's gas under here.
There is gas, there is oil, there is tar and sulfur.
That's incredible. And we're sitting right on top of it.
Yeah. And it seeps up during earthquakes.
So then an earthquake could actually release these gases and they could catch fire?
Yes, earthquakes discharge electricity. This could ignite the gas, this could form fire.
I mean, that sounds biblical to me.
Yeah.
You didn't have the science to explain it, and all of a sudden, something like that happened. It sounds a lot like the stories that we're reading about in the Old Testament.
If you ask me if it's possible, yeah.
It's an incredible idea. I'm beginning to see how an earthquake could cause something truly cataclysmic, like at Numira. A super blaze of explosions inflamed by a lethal fuel mix from underground. Explosions? Yes. But I've got images in my head of fire raining down from the sky. And something the story refers to as brimstone. What could that be? Just down the road from Mount Sodom, I'm meeting geologist Adi Torfstein.
I'm trying to find anything that might relate to the story of Sodom and Gomorrah.
We actually also find here sulfur. Have you heard of sulfur?
Yeah, of course, the smelly stuff.
Have you heard of brimstone?
The fire, brimstone, destruction, that thing?
Exactly. So brimstone is actually sulfur. And one of the few places we find brimstone sulfur is actually here. Want to see something cool?
Yeah.
I'll show you. Come. What we're looking for is all around us on these cliffs.
What does it look like?
Small, round, yellow nodules. Sulfur. Here, I can see one. Grab that.
Ah, smells like a stink bomb. This is brimstone, huh?
Found all around us here. So let's collect more of these, and I'll show you something cool.
Okay.
See this sulfur we collected, this brimstone? You can actually light it up and burn it, okay?
You can burn a rock.
You can see.
What? Look at that. Blue and purple is bubbling, and the rock is literally melting away. That is unreal. You can imagine that if you saw this happening, you would think it was something supernatural.
And actually quite nasty if we breathe too much of it. Let's get out.
Oh, gross.
So, with this final piece of evidence, could it have played out like this? A city trading in flammable asphalt is struck by an earthquake. Everything collapses, even the tower. And those that survive face something even worse. A raging fire, as hidden gas reserves erupt from underground. While the inhabitants flee, explosions hurl down burning sulfur. It would have been hell on earth.
Possibly, but possibly not. You know, I've seen evidence of ancient abandoned cities, burning sulfur, exploding gases, earthquakes, asphalt. I can buy into the idea that a series of events with these elements could have been combined into a single collective memory, into an epic story. But what I haven't seen is evidence of them all happening at once, in one place at one time. You know, an apocalyptic moment. Should be a lot more evidence, right? More than a fallen tower and fragments of charcoal. So could there be something much bigger out there to explain all this?
So I found some evidence that Sodom and Gomorrah could have been sitting on a pile of geological dynamite, set off by an earthquake.
But now, I've heard a completely new theory in a totally different area. So I'm relocating 50 miles away, this time to the north of the Dead Sea, to see something that I've been told is going to completely blow me away. This is Tel al-Hammam. Some archaeologists believe that this could be the ancient city of Sodom.
You're going to come straight this way, and you're going to make a right-hand turn.
Steve Collins and his team have been excavating here for nearly 20 years. And what they've found is astonishing.
This is, in fact, the largest continuously occupied Bronze Age city in the southern Levant. This gate complex is pretty impressive. Probably one of the biggest gate complexes in the Bronze Age. Massive tower, killing zone right in the middle.
And what makes you think that this could have been the city of Sodom?
So the reason is simply because the size of the city.
The largest in the whole region.
For the Bronze Age.
So it was a big city then, huh?
It's a very big city.
This is way bigger than anything I've seen so far. At almost 90 acres, it could have housed over 40,000 people. It's close to streams and springs of water. and surrounded by flat, fertile plains, as described in the biblical texts. And it lies on two trade routes, one running north to south and the other east to west. It's a pivotal position for a strategic trading city. On the hilltop, there's the remains of a palace, and inside it, tantalizing evidence.
In this area, we found many, many storage jars. It's carbonized, of course, burned. And the entire city, everywhere we've excavated, we have this massive destruction debris. So whatever destroyed the city also burned everything inside of it.
Something destroyed the city, things were burned inside it, and then you don't find any pieces of pottery afterwards?
No, there's a 700-year occupational gap. So we have no pottery from the period starting from about 1700 BC. Afterwards, all the way down to about 1000 BC, there's no occupation at this site.
So something happened at a massive scale, turning everything into this pile of rubble in one moment, right around 1700 BC.
And that's a good way to describe it. It's a pile of rubble. It is sort of a mixture, a tumbling of everything. This site, the destruction is absolutely the most violent kind of thing I've ever seen.
This smacks suspiciously of catastrophe. Whatever it was way more powerful than a fire. What could explain it?
Melted mud.
Steve's colleague, Phil Sylvia, has an intriguing new theory.
This is a piece of mud brick.
This is mud brick?
This is mud brick, and it feels kind of like pumice, doesn't it? You can see all those little bubbles in it. And this was exposed to heat, and it was so hot, the pottery itself has actually been melted into glass, probably at an angle like this, so that the melted material started to drip off. There's a drip edge right here.
Something flash burned this material to a temperature somewhere in the range.
Hotter than the sun.
Hotter than the sun.
By more than a factor of 4. There are only 2 sources that can generate that kind of temperature profile that we know of. One, of course, would be an atomic bomb.
What's the other one?
The other one is either a meteoritic impact event or an airburst event.
You think this was a meteor blast?
I'm personally convinced of that.
But could Phil be right? Could this place really have been destroyed by a meteor?
Well, just a few years ago, there was a meteor airburst caught on tape right over Russia. It's incredible. Literally, it's fire raining down from above. The big question is there some evidence, some clue, to help me determine whether or not a meteor could have exploded over this region some 4,000 years ago?
I'm investigating a new theory, that Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed by a meteor. I've brought in my tech team to scan the site for clues. Using high-resolution drones, we're photographing the site from multiple different angles, so we can build a 3D computer model.
Perfect.
Meanwhile, Phil Sylvia wants to show me something else that supports his theory.
This is about 400 pounds worth of rock. It was sitting on a dirt pedestal, and when the blast hit, it got rolled off of that pedestal and dumped on its side.
You're saying that something moved this massive stone?
That's right, doesn't move itself.
Phil believes the meteor exploded somewhere over the Dead Sea, creating a blast powerful enough to move solid rock.
The debris field was all pushed in this direction and banked up against this wall.
So your theory is that there was a big explosion over there, creating a flash of fire, hotter than the sun, blasting everything against these walls and vaporizing everybody in the city all at once.
Yes.
Not only that, but Phil's theory has one final component that resonates with the biblical story.
When you have an airburst over water, it creates a tsunami effect, and that pushed a tremendous volume of water across the full width of the valley floor. This whole area was taken offline by this event, and it became uninhabitable because of the salt poisoning of the ground.
The theory explains every element of the biblical texts. Burning question is, have the tech team found anything to back it up?
So Steve, for the afternoon, Patricia's been flying a drone around collecting photographs to create this photogrammetry model of the site. Can you show us what you found?
Yeah, with photogrammetry, what we can do is we can take loads and loads of different pictures, and then we stitch all of those photographs together, and we can make a 3D model, which I think gives us a completely different perspective.
So let's fly through that. This is your site.
I was very interested in this area.
The big circular area to the left, we think this is a very large water feature, like a cistern. And you can see the size of it.
The feature doesn't really show very well on here, but when we actually look at the 3D model
Yeah, that's
again,
interesting.
we've got lots of different colors. It's much, much more pronounced.
Yeah.
Wow, look at that.
We've been looking at this site for over a decade, but looking at this image, and it's the first time I've thought of this, but it looks like an impact crater.
This is the first time you thought that that might be...
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it, I was thinking as you were moving in on it, it looks like you're on the moon.
Well, which side is the actual side where
This is the southwest side. It would have come from this direction, the southwest.
Good job, Patricia. Yeah.
Not sure.
Who knows what it
No,
is,
we
but
don't
it's a
know.
clue.
We need to excavate that.
Steve's team will need to prove this really is a meteor. But it does fit with their other evidence here, and offers a plausible, terrifying explanation for the story. A meteor blasts in from space at hypersonic speed, exploding over the Dead Sea. It blasts salt across the landscape, rendering it infertile for generations. A fragment lands right by the city, vaporizing it to oblivion.
You know, the fear of apocalypse, it's in all of us. But very few stories deliver it on this scale.
One thing's for sure, when I started this journey, I thought it was just a tale of projected morality.
And what I actually found was a showcase of some of the most incredible geological phenomenon in a place where the Earth's crust is literally ripping itself apart, where the powers of destruction are so terrible that they may have gone down as being the hand of God.